if he spends time with me, then I'll feel connected, right? So the need is connection, okay? The desire is quality time or spending time with me. The need is connection. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, your go-to podcast and community for the raw and sometimes uncomfortable truths we need to face to create relationships that actually feel good. Together, we'll explore what's underneath patterns like codependency, anxious attachment, and the mother wound so that we can build and cultivate nurturing, authentic relationships. I'm your host, Alyssa, and I'm teaching you all the things that I've learned, unfortunately, or fortunately for you, the hard way, so that hopefully you don't have to. If you've ever struggled with identifying your own wants and needs, you're in the right place. Let's go ahead and dive into this week's episode. Hey everyone, I am so excited to dive into this week's podcast episode that is going to be about identifying needs, wants, desires, and what is the difference between a need and a desire. This was a question that came up in the Codependency Alchemy Mastermind this week, actually. And if you have been waiting for the next round of the Codependency Alchemy Mastermind, you're going to want to go to the show notes because the wait list is open and we actually start in a couple months. If you're looking for a very intimate space with less than 10 people and a private chat with me to meet one-on-one and in group masterclasses and alchemy calls where I'll lead you through shamanic journeys to heal and tend to core wounds, you're going to want to join the mastermind waitlist. So, Codependency Alchemy Mastermind. The waitlist is in the show notes. The next round starts in April, so make sure you get on the list before March because that's when the doors will open. And we have sold out for the last 2 rounds, so definitely join in the waitlist because waitlist gets first dibs, and it is an absolutely transformative experience. If you want, you can read previous testimonials from past cohorts in the show notes below. Now, what I love about the mastermind is that it is so intimate, so we really get to have these really deep, intimate conversations around things that really matter and the things that show up in day-to-day experiences, whether that's in your relationship or just in life in general. And one of the members posted this question in our private Telegram chat on what is the difference between a need, a want, and a desire. And I just think it's such a great question. I had to bring it to the podcast. And additionally, because I love co-creating with you guys, I even posted it in the Codependency Alchemy broadcast channel on Instagram. So if you follow me on Instagram, one, thank you. I love you. And if you want to kind of get in on some of these polls and these prompts that I put in there occasionally, definitely join the Codependency Alchemy broadcast channel on Instagram, where I asked this question so that I could get even more specific with you guys on this episode. The question, the prompt that I asked was, what is a need or want that you're not getting from your significant other or in your relationship, right? So before I get into some of the shares, which thank you guys for sharing your wants and needs that are not getting met, it really helps me give you guys these like actual examples that hopefully mean something to you, right? But first, I want to discuss how I have approached needs versus wants and desires, and how this has how this shift I have made, I should say, has profoundly supported me in my relationships and how I approach things with my partner. So, first, I'm going to talk about wants and desires. Because oftentimes what I see with people who I've worked with is that they are confusing a want or desire with a need. or they're confusing the want and desire as a need, I should say. I see want and desire as the same thing. So for me, I'm going to kind of use those two words interchangeably and synonymously. I'm not saying that that's the only way, but this is how I relate to wants, needs, and desires. What I have noticed for myself is when I have a want or a desire, it usually involves another person, and it usually involves the other person doing or not doing something. That is a want or a desire, and it tends to come in the form of a request. What I see happening more often than not is that people identify a want or desire as a need, and then they see that need as articulating a boundary in their relationship. And that's where I think we completely fucking miss the mark. Because we say, I need, let's use one of these examples. I need affection. I need affection. And then we communicate that to our partners and we say, I need affection. And the boundary is, if you don't give me affection, then you're not meeting my need. And then there's this war between you and your partner. And I don't know, that didn't work for me in my relationship. If anything, it made me feel alienated, it made him feel alienated, and we both felt unmet. So the shift that I made was I identified the want, because a desire and a want is, for me, much easier to access than the need a lot of times. And it can help be that like entry point into seeing what's underneath the surface. And I think the reason why I'm able to do this so much easier now is because of the endless hours of shadow work and inner child healing that I've done. The inner child prompts in the guide, if you have not downloaded it, download it for free. I'll leave it in the show notes. But there's a very specific reason why some of those questions are, what does this part of me want? And then what does this part of me need? Right? Wants are very important. They are very important. They show us what we didn't get likely as a child and what we're desiring now as adults. And those wants and those desires are very valid. So I don't think that they should be overshadowed, but I think that sometimes what ends up happening is we get fixated on the want or desire being met a specific way, and that is what causes, I think, a lot of dissonance in our relationships and a lot of rigidity, if you will. And I'm just speaking like guilty as charged, like I'm speaking from my experience where I was very similar. So what I've learned is that the need is what's underneath the surface of the want or the desire. So some examples I gave in the mastermind chat were, I want Justin to help with the dishes. I want support with the chores. I want him to do this chore and this chore. The need underneath that want is support, right? I need support. I want it in the form of him doing the dishes. But what gets to happen when I identify the need is, instead of telling him, hey, I really need you to do the dishes, that can feel rigid and controlling, right, to the other person. And if they have trauma and they're moving through their own stuff, well, they're going to try to exert control in their own way, which is declining it or saying they're going to do it, but then they don't do it. And I don't know that that happens consciously all the time. I think most of the time this is an unconscious pattern. But what I noticed that helped me in my relationship tremendously is not saying, hey, I need you to do the dishes, but literally saying, hey, I'm noticing I need support. I want you to do the dishes. Is that something that you can support me with today? That is a game changer. I know it feels weird. I'm not going to lie. It feels weird even the moment when you say it. But that language is so much more inviting and way less rigid and controlling. And 9 times out of 10, it was met with yes. And it was actually done because I said, I want, not I need you to do the dishes, right? I need some support and I want you to do the dishes. Can you meet me in that? Right? Still giving him autonomy. It's not telling him what to do, but it's saying, hey, I am a collaborator in this relationship and I have this idea. And what are your thoughts on that idea? He gets to say no. And I'm not going to lie, he has been like, no, I can't right now. I'm in the middle of a work thing. And I'll be like, okay, let's talk about other ways that you can support in a way that feels good for you when you have some time. Right? So it's not getting shoved under the rug. I'm not like, okay, well, I guess I just don't get my needs or wants met. Like, it's just like, okay, this is where you're at and this is where I'm at. So I'm just going to pause and we can come back to this at a time that works for both of us, and we can create an idea and a plan that also works for both of us. So another need of mine that was very common was like quality time. And it was one that was even listed in the broadcast, quality time. I need Justin to spend time with me, right? That is a want. That is a desire. I desire for quality time. I desire for him to spend time with me. What is the need under it? And so here's the next piece. How I uncover what the need is by asking myself, what do I believe that I will feel when I get that desire met? So if Justin spends quality time with me, what do I believe that will provide me with? If Justin does the dishes, what do I believe that will provide me with? If he does the dishes, I believe it will provide me with feeling supported, right? If he spends time with me, then I'll feel connected, right? So the need is connection, okay? The desire is quality time or spending time with me. The need is connection. So instead of saying, hey, quality time is my love language, you need to spend time with me, which is what I used to do, which I think is weaponizing love languages, to be quite honest. When I say, hey, I'm really looking for connection, what are some ways that we can connect this week? Options are endless, and it's not telling the other person what they have to do. Because then what ends up happening is when they don't do it, it just builds on potential unconscious stories of being inadequate, not being good enough, et cetera, et cetera. But instead it's like, hey, I'm looking for some connection. How can we connect this week? It's open, it's spacious. It's not saying that they're not doing something. It's not making them feel inadequate. It's inviting them to the table, and like now we get to create something together. And the options are infinite, and it allows for so much more creativity, and it just like makes the world of a difference in my opinion. So to kind of do a little synopsis, want and desire for me, same thing. Usually involves the other person. It usually involves a request of wanting them to do something specific. Underneath that is the need, or I find it easier to access the need by identifying the want or desire. I identify that need by asking myself the question, what do I believe that act, them doing that, will provide me with? And then that is the need. And then that need is what we bring forward to our partner. We lead with the need, which is something that is not an act, it's a feeling, right? Feel supported, feel connected. We lead with that. I need some support. I need some connection. Then how can we meet that in a way that feels good for both of us? I want you to maybe do the dishes or the laundry. Giving a couple examples of how you desire for that need to be met. I think I'm going to name this too, even though this was not, I was not planning on touching on this, but I think what happens is we want them to figure it out. Why do I have to do all the work? Why do I have to figure it out? Why can't they? And I want to say that this is literally codependency. I want them to figure it out. It's not their job to figure it out on how you desire to be met. That is called enmeshment. That is called a trauma response. The only reason why you do that is because you learned how to do that probably when you were a child with your parents in order to protect yourself. but it is a trauma response. It's not actually sovereign. It is not honoring sovereignty. It is not honoring autonomy. It is literally avoiding responsibility. These are the hard truths, right, that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. Like, these are the hard and uncomfortable truths, but we need to talk about them, because not talking about them is just perpetuating unhealthy relationship dynamics. You have to figure it out, because this is a you thing, your want, your need. So it is your responsibility to identify it and communicate it to your partner. And if the excuse is, I don't have time, it's too hard, I've got the kids and I've got the things and I got the work and think about how much time you spend wishing they could figure it out, and the suffering that you experience because they're not figuring it out. And I guarantee you that that is taking way more time than you sitting down with yourself and asking yourself the hard questions and then presenting them. I also want to name why you don't do this. We don't do this as people who experience trauma, who have these underlying people-pleasing tendencies and who have these codependency wounds, is because it is vulnerable. And we are fucking terrified of asking clearly and vulnerably and it being turned down, or it being pushed aside, or it being cast out. We are terrified of rejection. We are so terrified of rejection, we would rather live in suffering, wishing that they could just figure it out on their own and then do it for us, because then we would not have to risk rejection. And a very wise part of you created that. And a very wise part of you learned that. And we are so grateful for that part of ourselves, because ultimately that kept us extremely safe in a time that we needed it the most. And it is not serving our adult relationships anymore. If any of that resonated with you, if it was like a ping in your heart space where it like unlocks something that you really don't want to look at, but you know you have to, please, please, please take some time to download that free shadow work and inner child guide and move through those steps, because my loves, this is your invitation in. If you heard it and it's triggering and it's activating, that makes sense. A part of you is probably trying to protect you, and I get that, and I honor that. And you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. You don't have to hold on to anything that you don't want to hold on to. Let it just fall off of you like water. But if you feel the slightest bit of curiosity and opening, and you're desiring to see it through and see what's there underneath the surface for you, moving through those steps is going to help you tend to that part of you. And if you need support, because this is like, how do I do this? I get stuck, there's nothing there, then please join the membership, because I will help you. I will literally walk you step by step in our chat. It is literally my greatest joy to help you get there, because no one should have to do this work alone. And sometimes it is scary, it is nerve-wracking, it can feel confusing, and I get that. There's so many of us who are doing this inner work together because of that, because it can feel overwhelming, because it can feel scary. Like I've been saying for the past few episodes, I am offering this season a special intro discount for the membership, because I believe in this work so much, and I believe in this community that we've built, and I believe that we all deserve and are ready more than ever to unravel from these codependent dynamics. And so grab the special intro offer that's special for the podcast. So make sure you go to the show notes in this podcast episode to get that special link. It makes it only like $5 a month, you guys, and you get to join annually, so you'll get the whole year of support. It's 40% off what the price is normally. So if you're wanting that extra support, make sure you check out that link below. Okay, so I hope that I have summed that up in a way that is digestible, that want and desire versus the need, and how to identify the need through the desire. Now what I want to do in the second half of the podcast episode is take some of your guys' responses from the Codependency Alchemy broadcast channel on Instagram and give you guys examples of like, okay, here's the want, here's the need. how we can approach that with our partner in a way that's hopefully more supportive. So this first one is acknowledgement of my feelings. And you can go and read these too if you guys want on the broadcast. So she shares acknowledgement of my feelings, not agreement, acknowledgement. So what I would do next is I would ask myself, if I received acknowledgement of my feelings from my partner, then I would feel what? What is it providing you with? So this is how you take the want or desire and you uncover the need. So because I can't ask this question to this person, I'm just going to kind of do it for myself and just take it if it resonates, leave it if it doesn't. But if my partner acknowledges my feelings, then I will feel seen. Then I will feel heard. That's what comes up for me, at least. So the need is feeling seen and heard. Now I get to bring that to my partner and I get to say, hey, I'm noticing I'm just like needing to feel seen and heard. Do you have some space to witness me in my experience right now? So I'm asking for consent and I'm leading with the need. He gets to say yes or no, in which case, let's say he says no. And then I would say, because oftentimes we'll just sweep it under the rug if they say no, or we'll just like hunker down in resentment. And that's not the way either. So if I'm ever met with a no from my partner, I will say, I totally hear that right now is not a good time. When is a good time? So it's still on the table. We're going to figure out a time. If he says, I don't know, you can say, I would like to talk about this before Friday. I would like to talk about this before we go to bed tonight. So you're setting the boundary. And if they say no, and they say no, and they say no, then I would get really firm. And I would say, I hear your no, and I'm open to hearing more about your no. Can you please tell me more about your no? Because I don't want to fight, because this is stupid. I hear that you feel this is stupid. This is something that is important to me. This is assertive communication, you guys. And if you don't know about assertive communication or maybe even more unhealthy ways of communicating that most of us do, please check out the communication masterclass in the Codependency Alchemy membership. I list out all of these communication styles and relationships, including assertive communication, and it is such a robust masterclass and write-up. I'll leave it in the show notes below so you can check it out if you haven't already. But assertive communication is very grounded, and it's communicating in a way that is not coercive, but is firm. They're like, no, this is stupid. I don't want to fight with you. You get to say, if you're unwilling to have these conversations, that's totally fine. You get to choose. You are your own person. These are conversations that are important to me to have in my relationship. And so if we're not aligned in that, that's totally fine. You get to not want to have conversations like this, but this is something that I value in my relationship. Are you truly unable to meet me in this? And it's usually like where they're like, fine, we can talk tonight. Okay, it's fine that they're begrudgingly doing it. They're nervous for whatever reason, their own triggers, their own activations. But I always tell myself, like, if Justin shows up to the hard conversations when it matters the most, that's what's important. Even if it does start off begrudgingly, even if it does start off with them being triggered or activated, as long as he shows up to it and is willing to have them, then that shows that he's willing, right? There are some people out there, you guys, that are unwilling, that will blame you, that will point the finger at you, that will call you names, that will put you down. Then you have to ask yourself, is this relationship actually aligned to what I desire? Relationships are a choice. At the end of the day, every relationship is a choice. You can either choose to be in a relationship with a person who refuses to take responsibility for their side. That is your choice. And so you can complain about it and feel unmet, or you can take initiative. When I approach these conversations with assertive communication, my partner usually meets me. There was a time where I was in a relationship where I approached it that way, and that person didn't meet me. And that person made me feel wrong for even asking to have those conversations. That is called a toxic relationship. That is called a relationship where that person isn't willing to take responsibility. And then I have to ask myself, is this relationship actually aligned to the type of partnership that I desire and that I deserve? And those are really hard, raw, real questions that we have to ask ourselves. But
questions that we need to take accountability for nonetheless, or we'll pay for it in the long run. Okay, so went on a whole little tangent there. So here's another one. Okay, quality time, we did that one earlier. Actions aligning with words, healthy boundaries with X who causes significant distress in our relationship over and over. It looks like it's also baby mama. So we'll wait for this huge truck to pass by. So the want is actions aligning with words, the healthy boundaries, right? The question I would ask myself is, if my partner met these healthy boundaries, then how would I feel? What do I believe that would provide me with? And then that's what you get to lead the conversation with your partner. So if my partner asserts healthy boundaries with his ex, then I will feel supported. Then I will feel important. Then I will feel valued, are the ones that come up for me. I'm not saying that's what comes up for you. And then I would bring that forward to my partner. I am needing to feel valued and important. What are some ways that we can provide each other with that feeling of feeling valuable and important to each other? What are some ways that you feel valued and important to me? And then it gets that conversation on the table for both of you. It starts encouraging that conversation, and for them to even think, oh yeah, what are ways that I can show that I value this person, that I can show that this person is important to me. This other person wrote, initiative in planning trips, dates, activities to do together. So again, that's the want and the desire, is this person to plan trips, dates, activities to do together. I would ask myself, what do I think that will provide me with if they took initiative in planning trips? Then I would feel what? Then lead with that in the conversation, because maybe they're able to meet that need in a way that's outside of this specific thing. Like, I want the point here to kind of be around the rigidity of the want and the desire, and then we hyper focus in on that one thing, and then we hold it against them every time that they don't do that one thing. But when we present them with the need that's underneath the specific rigid one way of doing something, then we open up the possibilities. They're infinite, infinite ways of that there are infinite ways of your partner to meet you in that need. This might not be their zone of genius. This might not be their gift. And I think that's where we box our partners in, is like, we need you to do this one thing. But at the end of the day, so I kind of had this too, though, you guys, the planning the trips and the dates. I'm really good at that. And I like planning those things. When I put it on my partner, mostly with the planning trips, Justin is actually really good with dates. But it doesn't end up going the way that maybe I wanted it to go or hoped that it would go. And then, like, we're setting up our partners for failure, right? Like, the way that I see this shift of approaching things from this needs place, which provide you with a feeling instead of this specific you do this task place, is that we're now not setting this expectation for our partners to meet us in this one way, and then they're continuously like bumping up against it and like not hitting the mark. Like, that's what I see ends up happening is, okay, well, they need to plan trips and dates and etc. And so every time they don't do that, they miss the mark. They don't meet or exceed the expectation. And then that is felt in the relationship on both ends, because you don't feel met and then they feel inadequate. But what happens when we identify the need, which is feeling supported, feeling connected, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling important, feeling valued, feeling belonging? When we lead with that, then we allow our partners in to see us in a deeper way, and we see ourselves deeper too. Because what if Justin has an idea or a way that he wants to show me that I am, that I belong and that I'm loved, that I haven't even thought of. And when he does it, I'm like, oh, I get to like receive it. But when I say like, no, I only feel belonging when you do this one specific thing, it's rigid. And rigidity is distorted masculine energy. So like, how can we step into our feminine and be open, right? Feminine energy is like open, soft, curious, nurturing, spontaneous, creative. And can we get creative with the ways that we can potentially be met? It's okay to offer suggestions of ways for them to meet that need through these wants and desires. I'm, again, not saying that these wants and desires are wrong or bad by any means. They're absolutely valid and they make sense. And I resonate with a lot of these as well. It's when we lead with that specificity that I feel like if we just switched it, and I noticed for me when I just switched it, it opened so much more room for us to explore ways for that need to be met. Because defining a need as someone doing something for you is like, to me, is a wild, wild way to look at it. It is connecting only through a codependent lens of my needs are only met if you are doing this specific thing. Then you're always at the mercy of someone doing a specific thing for you. It is literally like drilling in a codependent pattern and dynamic. But when I approach it from a felt sense, a need from a felt sense, I need to feel supported. I need to feel loved. I need to feel worthy. I need to feel belonging. Then, one, I can meet those for myself in my own ways. How can I feel belonging within myself? Journaling. How can I feel loved within myself? Taking myself on a date, right? How can I feel worthy within myself? Affirmations, telling myself, meeting the parts of myself that don't feel worthy, shadow work, inner child healing. And then when I fill myself up with that and then invite my partner to meet me in that, it adds to my overflow. And now we're pouring into the vessel between both of us and into our relationships. We get so hyper fixated on details, and those details are just ego. And we're making our partners not meeting our wants and desires as something against ourselves. And then we're looking at our relationship through that lens of feeling unmet. So my invitation to you all through this episode, my intention really for this whole episode, is to identify what's underneath the surface of the want and desire. Not to override the want or desire, but just what's underneath it, that felt sense, what you believe your partner doing that thing will provide you with. And then leading with that in your conversations to your partner, asking for their consent, inviting them in to see that vulnerable part of yourself. And the real invitation is, when you identify that need underneath the surface of the want and desire, find a way to meet that for yourself first. This is how you step into sovereignty. This is how you step into healthy, loving, reciprocal relationships. When you fill your vessel up first with meeting your need for yourself, then you're actually going to be in a space to fully receive your partner meeting that need for you as well. The way I receive support from Justin when I support myself first, through boundaries I set, through self-care that I do for myself, I'm able to actually receive it. I can tell a difference when I override my boundaries, when I don't take care of myself. When Justin helps me, I criticize it like it's not good enough. But that's because I'm empty. If you're criticizing the way that your partner is showing up, the invitation is to look and see where you are not showing up for yourself first. Because we will really struggle receiving anything that our partner gives us if we have not tended to ourselves first and filled our own cup, filled our own vessel. It will have us grasping. That's why we go into, this is a tangent. Gosh, I literally cannot stay on topic, but it's related, right? It's why we'll criticize them and it not being good enough, because we're trying to fill a void. And if it was good enough, well, then they would stop. If it was enough, then they could stop. But when our vessel is empty and they're filling it, but it's going right out the bottom, then we need to criticize it again and again and again and again because we don't want it to stop. But do you see how we're exhausting ourselves and exhausting our relationships, our partners in our relationships, by being this like insatiable person? I'm not saying that doesn't go both ways. Like sometimes our partners are the insatiable ones. If that's the case, the answer is boundaries. Okay, before I go off on a whole nother spiel about something, I'm going to wrap that up. I hope this episode was supportive in helping you identify maybe a difference or a shift in seeing wants and desires and needs in a new light. I'll leave all those resources I named in this episode in the show notes below. Again, join the membership on Substack with the special discount code in the show notes. Join us for like $5 a month. It is by far the best way to spend your year. You deserve it. You deserve support. You deserve to be around other people who are doing the same inner work. There's nothing like having a community at your back as you're navigating these. It is inspiring. It is motivating. It is like the perfect little push that we need to be like, let's try something different. Let's try it a new way because this way hasn't been working. It's not working. It's worth it to just try something new. At the end of the day, if it doesn't work either, you can go back to the old way. But I think as a collective, we've identified that these old ways just aren't fucking working anymore. And if we want to experience a different type of relationship in this lifetime, then it starts with us. I love you all so much. I hope this was supportive. Let me know if you enjoyed this episode by liking, subscribing, sharing this with a friend who you think might also need these kind of conversations. If you haven't already rated the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen, I would so appreciate if you can't join the membership and support the podcast in that way. Please rate or review the podcast. It helps get it in front of more people, in front of more eyes, people who don't follow me on social media. So that is a free way that you can support me and this mission of healing codependency and healing the mother wound so we can all experience more sovereign, authentic, genuine relationships. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. Thank you so much for being on this beautiful path of remembering who we truly fucking are. I love you so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.